Welcome to the Learn to Sew Academy channel. Please remember to subscribe. Thank you.
Welcome to a new video. In my last video, I made a layered pencil skirt. And in this video, I'm going to be making a top to go with that skirt. And what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be making layered ruffles that's going to serve as my sleeves. Excuse my rough diagram here, but I just wanted to show this to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing. And we're going to have the sleeves on both sides. So it's just going to be a very simple, basic top, and at the back of it I'm going to have a zipper. So very simple, very basic. This is going to be my main fabric. This is also going to be my main fabric, and this will be the plain fabric that I used in the skirt. If you'd like to see the skirt, click on the link in the description and that will take you to that video. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to be folding this first into two, and then I'll fold that again this way. So what I'm aiming to get is to get my usual 4 layers of fabric on this side, because I'm going to be cutting the front and the back together. And as I begin to do this, I need to put into consideration the measurement and also the zip allowance. But what I'm going to do real quick here is I'm going to cut out the length of the blouse that I need after I've added the allowances, and this is just for me to have lesser fabric to work with. So the length I'm going to be using here is 25, and I'm going to add 1.5 to that, half for the shoulder and 1 for the bottom. Together that's going to be 26.5. So I want to measure 26.5 over here. But before I cut it, I want to make sure that what I folded here is enough. I'm going to be considering my bust and my hip, because the blouse is just going to be right on top of the hip. That's where it's going to end, right around the hip area. So that's why I'm going to consider the hip in this measurement, because the bottom of that top is going to be around the hip area. So the hip I'm going to be using is 44 inches. If I divide that by 4, that's going to be 11, and I'm dividing by 4 like I've always explained, because I took a circumference when I did my measurement. When I got the 44, that was the circumference, and right here I've folded this into 4, so I'm dividing that by 4, which gave me the 11. So I want to make sure I have 11 inches here, and at the same time I want to remember that at the back of this top I'm going to be putting zippers, so I'm going to need some allowances for the zipper. You can use anything between 1 to 1.5 inches for your zipper. It's just basically dependent on your preference. So, and as you measure this again, you want to also put your seam allowance. So if I'm looking at 11 inches, since the hip is bigger than the bust of 41 inches that I have, so I'm going to consider the 11 inches, and I'm going to add my allowance. You can use 1 inch, you can use half an inch, you can use 3/4 of an inch. Again, that is each individual's preference. So I'm going to look at the 11 inches plus 1 inch, so that gives me 12 inches. And then I'm going to look at my zip allowance. Right here I have this extra for my zip allowance, and this gives me around 1 inches roughly, approximately. So this is okay for me for my zip allowance. So I'm just going to measure my 25 plus 1.5 for my seam allowance. That's the 26.5. I'm going to measure that over here, and I'm just going to cut that out so that I work with less fabric. So what I'm going to start doing now is I'm going to start measuring from right here. Right here where I have the fold is going to be my center front. Where I have the opening is going to be my center back, because that is where I'm going to put my zipper. So I'm going to start to measure from here, the center front, because by the time we put the zipper, this is going to be folded in as well, and it's just going to match the center front. So that's why we measure from the center. So you start from the top where you have the shoulder, and the shoulder is 16. So I'm gonna do that again from the center I'm going to do 16 divided by 2. That's because for the shoulder, you moved from one shoulder blade to the other. That's how you measure the shoulder across the back. So you divide that by 2. And then I'm just going to come down 9 inches for me to now measure where my bust is going to be. And that's where I'm going to start measuring. You can also take an armhole measurement if that works better for you. But as you progress with your free hand, sometimes you're able to deduce what length you need to thick and all that. So, and as you do this too, you also want to put into consideration the fact that you're going to be having a seam allowance at the top here. So you want to put that too into consideration. That's the point where I'm going to measure for the bust, and the bust I'm using here is 41 inches. I divide that by 4, that gives me 10.25. And when I add 1 inch to that, for my seam allowance is going to be 11.25. Now I'm going to come further down from the shoulder area again, and I'm just going to measure the half length. And the half length I will use here is 18. And then again, I'm going to be joining this at the top. So I'm just going to do 18.5 right here. So that's the point where my half length is. And the purpose of doing this is to measure, is to know where to start to measure for the waist. We're going to use a waist of 38 inches, but then I'm going to add 2 inches because I want it to be a little free and not too tight. But depending on what you want, if you want it really fitted, you can go for your exact waist. But in this case, I'm going to be doing 40 inches. So that 40 we're going to divide by 4 again, and that will give us 10 inches. And then we're going to add our 1 inch allowance to that. And we're going to start to measure from here, from the center. And then the rest of it here, I'll just measure because this is just going to be right around the hip area. It's just going to be right there. So this is going to be my full hip, which was 44 inches. 44 divided by 4 is 11, plus 1 inch seam allowance, that is 12. So I'm going to use all of this full length right here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be connecting where I have my waistline. So I'm going to join this all the way to where I have the hip right here, and then this I'm going to join to where I have my bust, like that. And then we're going to connect where we have the armhole area. We're going to connect that to where we have the shoulder. So that's what we're doing right here. And to help you can check my video on how to make armholes. That may really help you. I'm going to connect the waist down to where we have the hip, like that. And so we're done with the drafting, except that over here for the neck, we're going to do the neckline, and then we're going to do a shoulder slope right here. So for the neckline, it's totally dependent on you. It's whatever you want to do for your neckline. Oh, and wait a minute. I apologize. I just realized that I did not remember to put my allowance. So always remember to put your allowance. So I'm going to be doing an allowance of ½ inch. I'm so glad I was able to catch that before cutting the fabrics. So now I'm going to join that point down to where I have my mark for the bust. Okay, so now I'm going to do the neckline, and you can do whatever you choose. You can do different types of necklines for both the front and the back, and I have a video on necklines too. I will put that in the description. I'll put a link there so you can see the different necklines that you can make. It's very detailed and it shows you some different necklines. So right here I'm just going to make, I think I'll do a 5.5. I'm gonna do a 5.5 by, I'll make it by 3, and I'm just extending it to the back because my back and front are all going to be the same. And now that we've drafted all this, then what we do next is just to cut this following the drafting. What I'm going to do now is to slant this shoulder, and to slant this you can either do half an inch or you can do 1 inch. It depends on you. And I'm done with this. So the next thing I'm going to show you now is how to cut the sleeve. What I have here is 10.5. So 10.5 will give us like 21 inches for the armhole. You can also measure your armhole if that will work better for you. So to get the radius, I'm just going to divide the armhole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 21 inches and we're going to divide that 21. We're going to divide the 21 inches by 6.28. But before I do that, I want to add extra inches because I want my circle sleeve to have some gathers. So it depends on how much gathers you want in it. You can do 20, you can do that 21 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. It depends on how full you want it to be. So in this case, I'm just going to be making it by, I'm going to be adding 3 inches to what I have. So which is 24 inches. That's 21 plus 20 plus 3. That's 24 inches. And then I'm going to now take that 24 inches and divide that by 6.28. So that gives me 3.82. I'm just folding this first like this, and then I'm going to fold it again this way. I want to consider the length of the sleeve. I'm going to have 8 inches in this fabric, and I'm going to have 10 inches in this other fabric. I'm going to cut the 8 inches first, and when you fold it, you are going to be adding your radius to that because you're going to cut off that radius, so we need to add that to it. So if we're doing 4 inches, for instance, plus 8 inches is going to give us 12 inches. So I'll just go by 4 inches. Again, my calculated radius was 3.82. So I'll approximate it to 4 inches. So I'm going to do that 8 plus 4 inches. And then we have to consider our allowance at the bottom when I turn it in. So that will be an extra 1 inch. So that will be around 13 inches. I'm going to fold this way. I'm going to make sure I have that 13 inches this way as well. Yeah, that is good. I have 13.5. I'm going to now cut my radius. I'm going to measure the radius, and like I said, I'm going to be using 4 inches, and this is my 4 inches right here. 4 inches is another one here. So all of these are my 4 inches, and I'm measuring it right from this tip right here. So this is my 4 inches. But now what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to have an allowance for joining it to the main top, so I need to leave my allowance, but this is different like the way we would normally add allowance. Normally we will add more when we're doing allowance, but when you do this, what we're going to do is we're going to come in, we're going to kind of reduce it. You know, we're doing 4 inches. So whatever my allowance is going to be, I'm going to be reducing it by that amount. So I'm going to reduce this by half an inch. So I'm actually going to be needing 3.5. And why I do that is because if I cut it right at this 4.5, at this 4 inches, or if I come further down and I put my allowance down half an inch and I put it under here, by the time you want to sew, it's going to be bigger than what you intended for it to be. But if I come up here and I put my allowance up here, by the time I now start to sew it, I'm going to end up on my actual 4 inches, which is what I wanted to do. So in that case, I'm going to be doing 3.5. So I drew this so that we can understand what I'm doing, so I can explain it. So now I'm doing 3.5. So now this is where I'm going to be cutting the one right here on top. So now I'm going to measure for the length. So it's either I start to do my 9 inches actually from here, because when I finish sewing, this is where I'm gonna end up at the lower mark here. So with my 9 inches, so I can either start from this lower one and mark my 9 inches, but for perfect accuracy I would suggest you start right from the tip here, and you just do your 9 inches plus your 4-inch radius, which is right here. So altogether that will be 13. So I'm going to just measure that 13, and that's what we're just going to be measuring all from that tip. What I'm going to do is to connect the dots that I have here. I connect all this mark, and then we just cut this out now. So now I'm going to make one more of this to have 2 sleeves. So what I'm going to do is just to fold it the same way, place it on top, and make a second of this. So what we're going to do is we're just going to fold it the same way too, but now this time around I'm going to be making it 2 inches longer. So what we did here was we used 13. So since I'm making it 2 inches longer, I just need to measure 15. Okay, and then I fold it again just the same way I folded the Ankara fabric. That's the same way I'm folding this one too. So I'm just going to place this on top of it. But when you place it, you want the complete fold to match your complete fold here, and you want where you have your open folds to match where you have 2 folds as well on your other fabric. Now what we can do is you can either just trace it with your marker, or you can just cut it directly. But before you do that, you want to measure your additional 2 inches at the edge. And again, like I said, you can make it shorter if you want. You can make this Ankara fabric shorter, and then you make this one too shorter than that. So it's just your preference actually. And then like I mentioned, we just cut each of these as 2 pieces. So we're gonna cut one more of this, one more of this, and that completes the cutting of the blouse. So this is what it's going to look like. It's gonna have the layers like I said, and I'm going to have some gathers here. So we're going to be having something like this, and like I said, it's totally up to you. You can make it shorter if you decide to have it shorter. You can make it really short. So it's just totally dependent on your preference, but this is what I'm going to be having roughly. To make the blouse, what I did was I cut some lining for this, and the lining is just a little shorter than the actual length of the top itself. So I made it like half an inch shorter, or depending on how much you want. When you fold it over here, you can do 1 inch, you can do half an inch, you can do 1.5 inch, depending on what you want. So what I did now is doing wrong side facing wrong side. I just sewed this edge right here, and then I also stitched the neckline all around. So by the time I turn it over, I'm going to have a little bit of the actual lining at the bottom here, so that when I turn it over, I'm going to have what looks like this at the bottom. So I'm going to iron it up. And then the same thing for the back. So I have 2 for the sides for the back. So I cut this also about half an inch, or depending on what you want to do, between half to 1.5, depending on how much you want over here when you turn it over. So what I did is I cut this like about half an inch shorter, and then doing wrong side to wrong side again, I stitched the end of it, and then I stitched the neckline, and also I stitched this area where I have my zip allowance. So that is what I've turned inside out, and this is what I did for both sides that make up the back. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take the front. Again, this is a dartless blouse. You can decide to put that in yours. If you decide to put that, you would have added 1 inch when you were cutting, and you would need now to first do your darts on both your actual fabric and on the lining. But because I don't have a dart in this, I'm just going to proceed with this. Now I've turned this the right side out. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take the side that's for the back, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to align it, and I'm going to start sewing this. So what I want to do is I'm going to sew them such that I am sewing the fabric together, wrong side facing wrong side. I'll sew it all the way to where I have my armhole. I'll come over here and I'll sew the lining all the way to where I have the armhole area. So that will join this first side of the back. It will join it to the front of the blouse, and then I'll do likewise on the other side too. I'll make sure it's right side facing right side like that, and then I would sew it the same way that I showed you. And when I'm done with that part, I will now come over and I'll take my shoulder area. I'm gonna match the two together. Again, right side to right side. The fabric is going to be facing the other fabric. One will be for the back, the other will be for the front, and the lining two will face each other. And then I'll sew this across. I can either come from the middle here and first sew this way, then come back from the middle and sew it the other way too. If I do it this way, it will really ensure that both the joining, where I have the joining for both the front and the back, it will ensure that they are properly aligned. And if you decide to do it all the way across too, just make sure that where you have the joining is properly aligned. And this will join your shoulder together. And then when that is done, I'm gonna flip it right side out and I will just iron all the edges. Now the sides have been joined to the front. So what I'm gonna do, like I explained earlier, is I'm going to now join the shoulder area. This is what it's looking like. This is the back, and then here's the front. So now next thing I'm gonna be doing is I'm going to add the zipper, and this is the zipper I'm going to be using right here. So I'm just going to, remember we left a zipper allowance, and what some people would normally do sometimes is you may not leave a zipper allowance, you may just leave like half an inch when you're using lining, so that by the time you want to do your zipper, this is just going to be where you just attach the zipper direct. That's another option you can do, but I have a zipper allowance here, so I'm gonna still use my zipper allowance. I'm gonna join the bottom part just a little, about 3 inches here, and then I'm gonna put my zipper. I'm going to be putting a gather stitch all across the circular sleeve, and then I'm gonna pull it just a little. I'm gonna have a little bit of gathers. As you can see, I've placed the two together, the two different fabrics. I have them lined up together like this, and I held them in place with a pin. So once I'm done with that, I will then take my blouse, the top I made now, and I'm going to attach my circular sleeve like that. So I'm going to be attaching this to the armhole area to form my sleeve, and then I'll do likewise to the other circular sleeves that I have. And then once that is done, the final thing that I'm gonna then do is to hem the edges of this. I'm just gonna turn it in twice, and I'm going to sew that all across Or I can also choose to just do an overlocking stitch at the edge and then turn it in one time. The same thing I'll do over here as well. I'll turn it in 2 times and I'll sew it all across, and that will complete the blouse. And this is what the final product looks like. I hope you're able to make yours and really enjoy making it. So please remember to give this video a thumbs up. And if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so right now. Thank you, and please share our videos. Thank you.